here, being a Black woman, having Black children, having a Black husband, for anyone to agree with excessive use of force on Black men or people in general, and then come back with the excuse, well, they should have just complied. And then we see the restraint that was showed on Wednesday,
right,
when they were asked to comply, right?
mm-hmm.
But they were in the right, right there. I don't know if we can disagree on that and things be okay, but we have to be able to have a true dialogue about that. And this is going to sound so funny, but one of the things that I feel has gotten in the way of us being able to have an open dialogue are buzzwords. I was cracking up. I said, oh my gosh, the political arena is full of buzzwords that people really don't understand the meaning of. They can use them in a sentence, but they don't really know what they're saying. And because of that, they're not even open to hear the other side, because they have been filled with so much rhetoric, right? That they don't understand how to navigate through the rhetoric to think critically about what is being said, to even hear perspectives of others. And when we go, listen, you're right. I think about the SEL framework as it relates to adults, and I'm thinking a lot of us were not taught to be socially aware of the perspectives of others from different races, demographics, or a different gender or religion. And we need that. And I just gave you a long answer from, what we were talking about. But I really, when you were thinking about that, I'm thinking, yeah, Tamara, I was thinking about how buzzwords are killing us politically. Can we get rid of buzzwords? Because even in education, we use buzzwords. And I think because being able to say something in 140 characters and it sounds good, but not having a deep understanding of what we're really talking about is really hurting us as a society. We want that Google surface level information. And because we're not going deep, we don't really understand how it affects us as it relates to relationships, or even affect our thinking, if you ask me. Like,
I totally agree. I think that this is part of the challenge that's before us as educators. How do we talk to kids about the current events? How do we frame these current events within the concepts of courage and honesty, kindness, cooperation? These things that it's not about politics, it's about being human.
yes.
And like you said, it's okay to disagree. It's okay to have different viewpoints, but it's not okay to hurt other people just because you don't agree with their ideas.
Mm-hmm.
It's not okay to destroy property because you don't agree with somebody's ideals. And you may not know this about me, and we're going over time, but we'll wrap it up in just a minute. Because this is so good.
Well, when you're having a good conversation, it's totally fun.
I know. I'm so glad you agree. I'm a mom of 3 Black children. My kids are all adopted. They're all biracial. They've been with me since they were newborns. So my perspective on this whole conversation that's happening, this is a conversation I've been having with my baby since my oldest was a baby. He's now 4 years old. I grew up in the North. I was in a very culturally diverse community. I was in a culturally diverse church. So it was my normal. And I didn't realize how abnormal my normal was until all of these events started occurring. And it's really interesting. That's not even the right word, to have that conversation with my 2 sons and say, hey, if you get pulled over, you better know what to do, and talk about where they put their hands.
Mm-hmm.
and talk about with my daughter. She's had this awakening this past year, um, as a young Black woman, and she's like, okay, mama, I know that my skin tone is light and I could pass, but I am Black and I am proud to be Black.
Mm-hmm.
And what does that mean for me, and how do I use my voice, and where do I fit in this whole cultural conversation that's happening? So for us as a family, it also goes back to those basics that I keep talking about. Like I tell my kids all the time, you have got to be people of courage. You've got to stand up for what is right. You need to be people who are honest. You live the truth. You need to be people who are kind. Treat others the way you want to be treated.
Yeah.
And, let that be your measuring stick for everything that you do and that you say. So, I mean, yeah, we're in the midst of it.
We are. Let me ask you,
Yep.
how does, because I'm really curious. How does the events that have happened, even going from the summer, comparing when Black Lives Matter were peacefully protesting, nowhere near breaking into the Capitol, breaking windows, but were met with, pepper spray, rubber bullets, excessive force, right? Versus what happened over last week when you have a majority white crowd who was, not only met with very little resistance, but then they were also very destructive. How does that make you feel, knowing that you really are, living in, I almost want to say, two worlds, your own personal world being a white woman, then having Black children? I mean, because I feel like that would be so hard for me.
Um,
Okay, so let me clarify that. Hard in a sense of knowing that the grace that I would be extended would be totally different than the grace my children would be extended.
yeah. Well,
I know I just threw that out there. I'm so sorry.
no, that's fine. This is fine. I love it. So it's a complex answer.
Mm-hmm.
For one, given my story, which
Mm-hmm.
I don't know fully, and a lot of people listening don't know yet, I'm working on it. I'm working on telling my story, people.
Okay.
I'm not just but like audibly, but like I'm writing. Given my story, I actually feel like I identify more with my Black brothers and sisters than I do with my white brothers and sisters.
Okay, now you have to explain that.
I know, because that face. And one of my white friends a few years ago, she sat me down. She goes, Tamara, what is going on with you? Because you identify more with Black culture than white culture. What's that all about?
Mm-hmm.
And part of it is just the way I grew up. I grew up in a multicultural church in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Black pastor. Uh, I went to a very diverse school, and it was my normal. And I didn't really think about it until maybe a year ago. I looked at the timeline and I was like, okay, so I was 5 years old, 1976, 8, 9 years after Martin Luther King was assassinated. And I was in a multicultural church in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think anything of it. But when I look at the timeline, I'm like, that's different. Not a lot of people can tell that story.
Mm-hmm.
Then fast forward, I was married, and that's a whole nother story. But ended up is deep. Ended up not being able to have kids because my kid's dad had cancer, and so we weren't able to get pregnant. So we adopted. My heart from working with the kids that I did, I started as a substitute teacher in Nashville as well. Worked a lot in community organizations in urban areas, lived in Edge Hill,
Mm-hmm.
which is an urban community here in Nashville. Um, had a heart for adopting domestically, wanted to adopt the kids who usually were unadoptable, which are the biracial kids. I mean, that's what the adoption agency shared with us. And I was like, those are my babies. So brought home 3 mixed race children and have raised them, you know, and I was very intentional about making sure that they knew their heritage.
Mm-hmm.
So from having lived in Edge Hill, being in a very diverse community, um, being intentional about the friend groups that we had, my kids being in Metro Nashville Public Schools in elementary and some of them up to middle school. Like the beautiful diversity that is Metro Nashville now. It was all that. And then my kid's dad and I divorced. I stayed in the city. He moved to a primarily white community. So I felt this burden to make sure that my kids, I really did, Erica. I felt this burden to make sure my kids knew who they were and where they came from, and that there is beauty and strength and value in that in a way that they may not have gotten if I had moved out to the white suburbs.
Mm-hmm.
So we lived in Edge Hill, and then we moved to North Nashville, where in North Nashville, like we were near Fisk University, we were near Meharry Medical, we were near TSU. Our neighbors were homeowners, business owners, our friend group, they're welders, IT people, artists, poets. Like they've seen not just like the stereotypical Black man on the corner selling drugs,
Mm-hmm.
or
Mm-hmm.
living in the projects. They've seen the very affluent African Americans in our city. They've seen,
Mm-hmm.
you know, they've seen the whole strata, right? And I'm just committed to that. So it's just part of my DNA.
Yeah.
So when it comes, I know this is a really long answer, but when it comes to the current events, these are conversations that I've been having with my kids for 22 years.
Mm-hmm.
My concern has actually been not as much about my skin color when I look at the events of January 6th, as it has been about my faith. And when I see people claiming their Christianity and causing acts of violence, I go, that's not the Jesus I know.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the kinds of conversations I have with my kids, because we do that. I mean, we have faith conversations all the time too, but the racial identity conversations, I mean, we have that all the time.
Yeah.
We've had to, as a transracial adoption family. I think now it's just my voice can be heard in a different way. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I'm still living my life, and we're still having our family, but now people can go, oh, what's that like for you?
Mm-hmm.
And my hope is, Erica, my hope is that my life and my experience, my children's lives, can be a bridge to say, yes, there is a beauty in each cultural heritage, but what is it that brings us together as
Mm-hmm.
beings in this human family?
Yeah. No, that context was important. So I needed the background, because what I heard you say a few things. One is this is not a new conversation, right? I knew I needed to have these conversations with my kids growing up. Two, I was raised to appreciate beauty in diversity. So that's what I heard. So out of everything you said, your parents made sure that you saw the beauty in diversity. And I think that's what is happening to us. We are isolating with groups that are like us. And when we have to encounter people who are different from us, it makes it hard for us to be relatable. And, if we were to take that back to education, that is something else that I have to bring to educators. Just because you didn't grow up in the same areas of your students does not mean that you and your students do not have things in common. I was, I'll come back to this, but I'm gonna keep going. I'll come back to what I was about to say. But then I also heard you say that tolerance was a big issue, and that you were raised to and it's almost, the word tolerate almost sounds like, ugh, tolerate people, but you were raised that people are more alike than they are different. And it's not that your skin color now is a big thing for you, more or less, than your ideals. It's kind of like your ideals as a white woman may be questioned because, listen, you do have a heart understanding the beauty of diversity. And, that might come into question more so than your skin color or anything else, but the ideals of the beauty of diversity. And as an educator, I think more than anything, that is something that bothers me more, is that we are not being, not everyone, and I don't want to make a general assumption, but I'll just say this, that we are not celebrating the beauty of diversity. And when we begin to celebrate the beauty of diversity, people find that problematic, that when we celebrate diversity or we celebrate other cultures. And I think more than anything, that hurts us, the educational system, because the educational system is diverse. And so the question becomes, when do we get to celebrate diversity instead of still doing education as we've been doing it for the last couple of 100 years, when it was exclusively created for an elite system. Now that this educational system is open to everyone, culturally, gender, racially, religion, when do we get the opportunity to understand the beauty in the diversity that we have in our country and in our educational system? So.
Yeah. And as you're explaining that beauty and diversity, I'm going back to something we talked about a long time ago in this conversation. Struggle.
Yeah.
Just as we have at times a power struggle with our students, we can have a power struggle with other adults or other ideas. And we just need to stop that. I mean, that's the mama in me, right? Stop it. But recognizing that there is place for all of us at the table. We don't have to be threatened. Me having a conversation with you and you having a different point of view doesn't threaten who I am.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It only threatens me if I let it threaten me. But if I know who I am and my heart is open to learning, which is what we want our students to do, right? Then I don't have to be threatened. There's nothing to be scared of. And I try to look at everything, Erica, through the lens of love. What would love do? Well, love is courageous, and love is honest, and love is kind, and love is courteous, and love is cooperative, and love is dependable, and love is forgiving. This is what love looks like. And I feel like in a lot of ways in our culture, we have a very distorted view of love. We equate love with sex. And they're not equal.
Yeah. We can have a whole nother conversation on that. Listen, we might need to do an interview part 2, because we can go a whole nother.
I know. I'm sitting here going, I might need to ask Nadia to split this one in 2.
Yeah.
And then we can talk more. But yeah, I mean, it's just, there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on in our world. There's a lot going on in education, in this rapidly changing environment. And I think that we have to be willing to change.
Yeah.
The status quo, or thinking that we can go back to normal.
I don't think we'll ever be able to go back to normal. We're not. First of all, you're right. What is normal?
Right. Exactly. And was it working for us?
Right.
I don't think so.
What is normal? Listen, I almost want to take you back to when I mean, you can't skate over that when we say we equate love to sex. Because when we are thinking about, I was talking to a group of high school teachers, I worked with like 400 teachers yesterday. And so my last group was high school teachers. And when we go back and talk about the importance of relationship and how that allows us to make sure that we are paying attention to the whole child and that we're able to reach the whole child, the relationship is important because, again, love in a big world, and the focus is making sure that we address our students' SEL needs. One of those competencies is healthy relationships,
Yes.
right? And when we think about relationships, how can we help our kids to see what a healthy relationship looks like, and that someone doesn't show you love by physically abusing you or pressuring you to, engage in sexual encounters that you're not comfortable with, or by putting you down emotionally and verbally, right? That's part of the framework, right? And so how can we teach kids relationship skills and what healthy relationships look like without having a relationship? So, when I think of, everything that we do as educators, it is all foundationally in the relationships that we cultivate with our students, which allows us to talk about sensitive topics. Because when you look at, when you think about trauma and how trauma manifests itself, when kids have been exposed to trauma at young ages, a lot of times risky sexual behaviors is another way that trauma can manifest itself. Mm-hmm. How do we get there if we don't have a relationship? Right. And so this relationship of SEL and trauma is not a quick type of conversation. This is a conversation that has to be ongoing, where we look at different components of the manifestation of it. How do we tackle it? What are some skills that we need to give our students? So, I mean, listen, you can't just throw that out there and then we have to move on.
No, I mean, you're right. And I have a 22-year-old, a 17-year-old, and a 15-year-old. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, listen, my youngest just turned 18, so I get it.
So, I mean, we talk about race, we talk about faith, we talk about sex, we talk about all of it. Why? Because we have to. And what gives me the right to talk about that with my kids? Because they know that I love them.
Yeah.
Because I've got that relationship with them.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean it looks good all the time. My kids and I, especially in the years that I've been a single mom now for 13 years, in the years that I've been a single mom, we have had some very ugly moments, but we're together in the ugly and we're together in the good, and because of the strength of the love that we have for one another, we can go deep on this stuff. And I think that's important. And I, as a mom and as an educator, my perspective is that we as educators need to support the family first. That's our job, because parents, no matter what we might think of them, we need to respect them as the parents, and they are the children's first teacher, right? And then if there's a gap there and we love these kids, then we need to step up and love them with our lives and be willing to have these difficult conversations. We've got to earn the right.
We have to earn the right. We
earn the right by showing them that we love them.
Your consistency. You know why you and your kids have made it through those moments? Because you have been consistent. Exactly. They know my mom is going to be here regardless. This might not be a good time. And, I have sons. And so when they're going through puberty and all of that thing, of course, there's a power struggle. And I tell people from about 8th grade to maybe about the end of their 9th grade year, I didn't particularly care for any of my boys. I loved them dearly, but just going through that and them understanding, okay, I might have not have been the best child during this point, but my mom and my dad, they're still here and they still love us. You know, I tell somebody, I said, sometimes my 18-year-old is a little too honest with me. Like, I don't care. Go talk to your dad about that, you know? But that is because of that mutual relationship that is in love, that we have a mutual trust for each other, a mutual respect. Because listen, I can't take for granted that just because I'm their mom, that they're going to respect me.
Exactly.
Right. I think sometimes we take those things for granted, and I can't. You know, I tell teachers all the time, you are molding little adults, right? You are adding a piece of the puzzle to this miniature adult every year, because eventually they're going to be adults and they're going to take the lessons that they have learned throughout life, and that is what's going to shape them. And so do not take for granted that just because you are the adult, that this kid has to feel like they have to respect you, right? They require a sense of mutual respect. And I said, and then when we think about healthy relationships, you are helping shape what does a healthy relationship look like in a work environment. If this is my boss, right? Like you're their boss at the moment, what does a mutual respectful working relationship look like, right? What does a mutually respectful friendship look like? We're helping shape these things. So I don't take for granted that I'm my kid's mom and that they have to respect me, because I know a lot of parenting kids who do not get along because, kids were not shown a sense of mutual respect. And I don't take that for granted. But I know that I have to be consistent as the adult. And I know that I have to be intentional when I'm interacting with whether it's my kids, students, or other adults. I have to be very intentional when I'm interacting with another person to make sure that I'm not being offensive and that I'm taking into account how they feel, right? And so when we think about those things, listen, everything is going to foundationally be in relationships, and that's what we go back to. And when we're talking about SEL and we're talking about equipping students with life skills that they're going to use, if I don't respect you, any lesson that you're trying to teach, I'm not going to take hold to, and I'm not going to care about it. I don't even care for you. So why should I even think that you're trying to teach me something that's going to do me any good? And so I go back to, fundamentally, everything is grounded in relationships and respecting the beauty in diversity. That's going to be my 2021 thing. That's going to be my theme. I'm saying that it's beauty in diversity. Mm-hmm. And how do we help each other see that?
Yes.
Yeah.
So good. Oh, Erica, I love you. I'm so excited.
I know. I'm looking like, wow, we're 30 minutes over, but this was such a great conversation. And listen, this was a great conversation. So I appreciate you even having me.
Yes. Thank you so much. And stay on for a minute after we say goodbye to folks, but where can people find you? How can they get in touch?
Okay, so I'm laughing because my handle is so funny. So you can find me anywhere under The Erica Battle, THE Erica Battle, on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on Twitter. I am The Erica Battle. I just started a YouTube channel. Listen, I have like 2 videos up, but that too is The Erica Battle. And I did that because I was Googling my name, and it's a ton of Erica Battles. And it's like 3 or 4 of them that are educators. And I was like, so I had to put the THE in front of it, so kind of to distinguish myself. So anywhere that you're looking for me, you can find me under The Erica Battle.
Wonderful. Well, Erica Battle, The Erica Battle, for sharing your wisdom and passion with us today. on LBW Educate You.
Thank you for having me. I truly appreciate it.